He's speaking to his wife, Titi. Because of your lamentation, penitence, and proper deliberation, and also because of your unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and your adoration for Lord Shiva and me, one of the sons, Prahlada, of your son, Hiranyakashipu, he's speaking to his proved devotee of the Lord, and his fame will be broadcast equally with that of the personality of Godhead. So this is good news for Didi. Although she's going to give birth to Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, but the child of Hiranyakashipu, Lord Maharaj, will be a pure devotee. So her grandson will be a pure devotee. And then next verse, text 46. In order to follow in his footsteps, as saintly persons, in order to follow in his footsteps, saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from animosity, just as the purifying processes rectify gold of inferior quality. Okay, so when it says we'll try to emulate means to act in the same way. In order to follow in his footsteps, saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from animosity, just as the purifying processes rectify gold of inferior quality. So you rectify gold, so when people go looking for gold, they usually find it mixed in with a lot of either dirt or rock. So they have to fire that gold mixed with rock and separate the gold from the rock. So that's called a purifying, with the purifying process. Purport by divine grace, A.T. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Yoga practice, the practice of purifying one's existential identity, is based mainly on self-control. Existential means living or the way one is living, basically. So, yoga practice, the process of purifying one's existential identity, is based mainly on self-control. Without self-control, one cannot practice freedom from animosity. Animosity means hatred. In the conditional state, every living being is envious of another living being. But in the liberated state, there is an absence of animosity. Animosity means you really don't like somebody and you're show bad behavior toward them by criticizing them and even lying about them and so forth. In the conditional state, every living being is envious of another living being. But in the liberated state, there is an absence of animosity. Prahlad Maharaj was tortured by his father in so many ways, yet after the death of his father, he prayed for his father's liberation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He did not ask any benediction that he might have asked, but he prayed that his atheistic father might be liberated. He never cursed any other persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. Here you have a real son, although his father trying to kill him, he prays for his welfare and for him to be blessed and not suffer. So, see, now there are people like that. Like, for example, I remember some years ago, I might be able to look this up. Some years ago, there was a white man, and he went into a black church, black people's church, and he killed these people while they were praying. And then the leader of the church didn't die in that massacre. He organized a prayer for the murderer and forgave him. And you looked at that, those in South Carolina, I think, or North Carolina.
June 17, 2015, Maharaj, in South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, Dylan Stormbrew is an American white supremacist, neo-Nazi, and mass murderer who is currently serving time on death. So he basically entered the church and started shooting.
I think he killed 9 people in the church.
Who killed 9 people? Yes.
And afterwards, the leader of the church, who fortunately didn't get killed, he and the remaining church members, they all prayed for his salvation. Hare Krishna. So that means that they were real, genuine devotees of the Lord. And here it says, in order to follow in his footsteps, Kashyapa Muni wants to follow in footsteps for life. Okay. Saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from animosity. Animosity basically means hatred and no respect for someone. Just as the purifying processes rectify gold of inferior quality. So, yoga practice, the process of purifying one's existential identity, is based mainly on self-control. So, if you want to be a yogi, you have to have control of your mind and your senses, and be a well-wisher of all people, and not have any bad thoughts about people. Always be positive. Now, there are some people that are always negative, always criticizing other people, always envious of other people. Those are the people you should really not associate with. They can completely, let's say, defile or contaminate your mind by hearing all the nonsense things they say about other people. So, the yoga practice, the process of purifying one's existential identity, your living identity, is based mainly on self-control. Without self-control, one cannot practice freedom from animosity. In other words, unless you have self-control, you can't be free from hatred, jealousy, and all those things. In the conditional state, every living being is envious. Essential identity. But in the liberated state, there's an absence of animosity. So, genuine devotees are well-wishers. They're not envious of others who are, let's say, who are blessed and are recognized as genuine devotees and who attain, certain wonderful, they're able to do wonderful things in society, beneficial things to help other people become Krishna conscious. So, every living being is envious of another living being, but in the liberated state, there's an absence of animosity. Very important point. Absence of animosity and hatred and anger towards him. Prahlad Maharaj was tortured by his father in so many ways, yet after the death of his father, he prayed for his father's liberation by the Supreme Personality. He did not ask any benediction that he might have asked, but he prayed that his atheistic father might be liberated. He never cursed any of the persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. Yeah, and just like the great saint, what's his name? Well, there was a great saint, and he was being beaten and in 25 different villages.
Haridas Thakur.
Haridas Thakur, yeah. And that was so he would be killed. Right? But the more he was beaten, the more he was smiling. So the two men, or the men that were beating him, they said, Haridas, we're just following orders. We don't really dislike you. We can see that you're a saintly person, but you have to understand, if we don't kill you, we're going to be killed. So please die. And Haridas said, oh, I don't want anything to happen to you. Okay, then I'll die. So eventually, Haridas looks like he's dead. And then the person that ordered his death comes just to make sure he's dead. I think he kicked him to make sure he was dead. And then he said, let's throw him in the river, get rid of him. Good riddance. So they do that. And then Haridas goes down the river somewhat. And then he comes out. And then he goes and knocks on the door of the person that kicked him and wanted him dead. And when the person opens the door, he's shocked, completely shocked. And Haridas said, don't you ever do this to anybody else. Otherwise, you will be severely punished. So then Haridas was very interested in something, because although he was beaten very severely, he did not feel any pain. So he went to see Lord Chaitanya. And when he saw Lord Chaitanya turned his back toward Haridas. And then Haridas saw that all the whipping and the pain and blood that he was supposed to have actually was accepted by the Lord and protected him. So these are very interesting pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and his devotees like Haridas Thakur. And this can be experienced even today if you have complete faith in the Lord, and you might be tortured or you might in some way be harmed, but the Lord will protect you and the Lord will accept your suffering. And in that way, although you're being beaten, you're not suffering. Now, this is very, let's say, mysterious things that are happening sometimes, but in the life of a pure devotee, Krishna says, Konteya pratijanihi nami bhakti. Declare it loudly that my devotee will never perish. So Krishna is promising to protect his devotees. Even at the up to the point where the Lord will accept the punishment that the devotee is supposed to feel and will protect the devotee. So we should, if we're smart, we should always be a devotee and serve the Lord with faith and devotion, and not be worried about the bullies and dangerous people and all kinds of different things. Like, for example, at one time when we started Harinam Sankirtan in Paris, several times we were arrested by the police, and they would take us down to the jail and put us in jail. And sometimes it lasted one day or more. And but they could see we were not criminals. We were not really breaking any law. All we were doing is singing and dancing. So eventually they stopped bothering us because they saw we were not bad people. One time when I was doing Sankirtan in Paris, we were in this neighborhood where there were some butchers, and they would be cutting up dead carcasses in public.
Mhm.
And, they would hang them on these very sharp types of I don't know what you call this, hooks in public, and then they would cut them up, right? So we go through a neighborhood like that where there are butchers and they're outside and they're cutting up animals, right? The carcasses of the animals. The animals already, their hair has been taken off and everything, but now they're cutting up the body of the animal to sell it. And when they saw us, one of those men came running toward me, grabbed me, and put a knife to my neck and started laughing and talking in French and talking to the other people that were there as friends. I said, should I cut his neck off? And I just didn't try and fight with him. I just let him do whatever he was going to do. And eventually let me go. If I was fighting with him, then he probably would have cut me some way or other. So sometimes these are, very precarious situations they can be in when you're doing Harinam Sankirtan. And we happen to go through a neighborhood of butchers, right? And this one man thought it was going to be really funny to, grab one of us and put a knife on our neck. I just didn't. I just stood there. I didn't try and fight with him or anything. Then he told his friends, should I cut his neck off? And they were saying, yeah. And finally, he just let me go. Okay, thank God. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here right now. Okay, so Prahlad Maharaj was tortured by his father in so many ways, yet after the death of his father, he prayed for his father's liberation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He did not ask any benediction that he might have asked, but he prayed that his atheistic father might be liberated. He never cursed any of the persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. So there was a group of, what's their name? Well, anyway, it was some religious group in the United States, and they would go to cemeteries and pray for people who had died. And they would go to like Jewish cemeteries, Muslim cemeteries, Christian cemeteries, now they didn't know who the people were that they were praying for, but they would see, on the gravestone who it is. And then the people, the relatives who were still living, sometimes we get angry and say, why are you doing this? We don't know you, and you don't know the person that died, so why are you doing this? And they said, well, we want to pray for the salvation of this person. They said, but he wasn't a Christian. They said, well, that's okay, but we want to pray to Jesus to save or help this person who's dead. Then they would go to the cemetery and pray for the salvation of dead people. You can look that up, actually, so you can find that. Okay, so Prahlad Maharaj was tortured by his father in so many ways, yet after the death of his father, he prayed for his father's liberation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He did not ask any benediction that he might have asked, but he prayed that his atheistic father might be liberated. He never cursed any of the persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. Now, see, this is a real son. That's why it's usually important that the father has a son, at least one son, so that the son can perform the ceremonies when the father dies, and continue to do that year after year on the anniversary of the father's death. And what is the ceremony? Basically, it's offering prasadam to the dead father. Right? And that's very good because it helps the father from being in a very difficult situation after death. What's a difficult situation? Well, it means that you're under the grip of Yamaraj and you're suffering in the hellish world. There are many different places in hell, and there are many different ways that people commit sins. So for each type of sin, there's a particular place where someone is put, and they are tortured, basically. And it's very, very painful. And they're already dead. In other words, they already died, but the torture doesn't stop, and the pain doesn't stop. In other words, even after you die, you still have a subtle body that's not dead. And that subtle body can be tortured, and you can actually feel the pain and the suffering. So to liberate people from that, the relatives can pray for that person's salvation. If you don't have anybody that's praying for your salvation, then you're in big trouble. Or if you're a bad person, nobody wants to pray for your salvation, you're in bad trouble. So there was this one group of Christians, they would indiscriminately pray for, they would go to these cemeteries and start praying for the dead people. They could see, you know, their where they were buried, and the you know, the stone with the name of the person, and they would pray for them. So the people who were relatives of the dead person, some of them objected, say, you don't know who our parent is, and we didn't ask you to do this. Why are you doing this? They said, well, this is our duty as good Christians to help all souls go back to God and, you know, let's be blessed by God. Okay. Did you look that up?
Yes, Maharaj, but I'm not able to find the name of the Christians.
Oh, that's all right. But did you find something?
Yeah,
What does it say?
they basically go to cemeteries of other people and they pray.
Okay.
Yeah, so tradition of praying for the dead still brings some, I mean, there are some articles about people who pray. A group of local Catholics gathers at Holy Cross Cemetery North in front of a statue of Jesus to pray for the dead. So there are articles like that, Maharaj.
Okay. Okay, pray for the dead.
Mm.
Good thing to do. Alright, so, in the same way, yet after the death of his father, Prahlad Maharaj prayed for his father's liberation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. See, it's not a bad thing to pray for the dead. Prahlad Maharaj was going to do that also. He did not ask any benediction that he might have asked, but he prayed that his atheistic father might be liberated. He never cursed any of the persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father. So his father is dead, and he's praying for his welfare. That's a real son. That's a real son.
Maharaj, there is a day called All Souls Day.
All Souls Day. Okay.
So is a day of prayer and remembrance for the faithful departed observed by Christians on 2nd November through prayer, intercessions, alms, and visits to cemeteries. People commemorate the poor souls in
Purgatory.
purgatory and gain them indulgences.
Yeah, in the Armenian church, they do that also. I remember that. They used to do that. They used to pray for all dead people.
Mm.
And purgatory is a place where some Christians go instead of hell. they go to a place called purgatory where they're held in waiting for the second coming of Jesus, and they have a chance of being forgiven at that time, and so they go back to God or go back to heaven, whatever.
So like that, each faith has its own day. It's called Saturday of Souls for Eastern Orthodox or Greek Catholics. And like that, Latin Catholicism, they have a separate day, Maharaj.
Yeah. The Armenian Church also, I remember they used to pray for the dead. I don't remember it being one day they would do it. If I remember correctly, they would do it at the end of the the end of the spiritual chanting and everything. At the end, they would pray for the dead. Usually because somebody would ask them to do it and give some extra money, and then they would say the name of the persons and then pray for them. And it's very nice. The spiritual chant that they had for that. It was very. What do you say? You could tell it was a very intense type of chant. Okay, so text 47. Everyone will be pleased with him because the personality of Godhead, the supreme controller of the universe, is always satisfied with the devotee who does not wish for anything beyond him meaning Krishna. So the devotee only desires Krishna and not, he doesn't want a brand new Tesla, or doesn't want this, or doesn't want that. He only wants Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated everywhere as the Super Soul, and he can dictate to anyone and everyone as he likes. The would-be grandson Diti, the would-be grandson of Diti, who was predicted to be a great devotee, would be liked by everyone, even by the enemies of his father, because he would have no other vision besides the Supreme Personality of God. A pure devotee of the Lord sees the presence of his worshipable Lord everywhere. The Lord reciprocates in such a way that all living entities in whom the Lord is dwelling as the super soul also like a pure devotee, because the Lord is present in the hearts. He can dictate to them to be friendly to his devotee. Let me read that again. The Lord reciprocates in such a way that all living entities in whom the Lord is dwelling as the super soul also like a pure devotee, because the Lord is present in their hearts and can dictate to them to be friendly to his devotee. There are many instances in history wherein even the most ferocious animal became friendly to a pure devotee of the Lord. A ferocious animal, like a lion, like a tiger, a bear, and so forth. Let me just read that sentence again.
Yeah, it's basically because the Lord is inspiring anybody to like the pure devotee. That's the yeah. Go ahead.
The Lord reciprocates in such a way that all living entities in whom the Lord is dwelling as the super soul also like a pure devotee.
That like is like liking a pure devotee.
What should it be?
I mean, that like is like somebody you're liking someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also like a pure devotee because the Lord is present in their hearts and can dictate to them to be friendly to his devotee. Okay. There are many instances in history wherein even the most ferocious animal became friendly to a pure devotee of the Lord. Don't try and test that. You might end up becoming the dinner of that group. And, but it does happen. Oh, okay, now you can look this up. There's this one Black African girl. In Africa, there's a thing that the parents do to their female child. They basically cut off the possibility of that child having any, pleasure in having sex. So they mutilate the child's genital area. And it happens a lot. Don't ask me why. I don't know why they do that, but they do them. And the father doesn't, mutilates the child. And it's very painful. So there was one girl that ran away from her parents. And they ran after her, but she was able to keep running and running, and they got away from her parents. And then she sort of, fainted out of exhaustion. And when she woke up, there was a tiger looking right at her, almost in her face. And she was like petrified. And tigers are very dangerous. This was in the wild in Africa. But he just looked at her and finally walked away. So that's why it says here that there are many instances in history where even the most ferocious animal became friendly to a pure devotee of the Lord. So that tiger looked at her and then he walked away. So that was like mercy of the Lord. Okay, any questions about this? All right, then we go to text 48.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yes,
About the previous one, Maharaj,
yes.
or maybe this one only. Like, I think it says Paramatma is in everybody and he inspires everyone to love a pure devotee.
Yeah.
But we do see instances where there are some people who are against even pure devotees.
Mm-hmm.
If
They're
there's
called demons.
So then, but Paramatma is in the demons also, but he's not inspiring them, or he's inspiring them, but they can't see it.
Well, always remember that everyone has limited free will. So if they're fool enough to be antagonistic toward a devotee, which is a very bad thing to do and very dangerous for the person.
Or even neutral, like sometimes they're neutral or have negative feelings, either of those.
Okay. Well, that's to their own detriment. So Krishna doesn't interfere. But Krishna will protect the devotee. But he doesn't interfere and sometimes in stopping the animosity of an envious person. But he'll protect the devotee. And there are many histories of this, where the devotee was protected. And it's like the beating of Harivilas Thakur. He was beaten in 24, 25 villages. And finally, the people that were, hired to beat him, they pleaded with him. Look, they said, look, we're just doing what they told us to do. And, we have our families, we have our children. And if you don't die, they're going to kill us. So I said, okay, I'll die. So, at the last village, he was supposed to be beaten in I think 25 villages. At the last village, he acted as if he was dead. And then the person who had ordered the beating, he came and kicked, make sure he was dead. Then he was satisfied and left. And he said, throw him in the river, get rid of him, good riddance. So when Haridas was thrown into the river, he went downstream and came out. And then he went back to the house of the person who ordered him to be killed and tortured. And when the man opened the door to his house, he was shocked that Haridas was there. Just imagine what a shock that is, because he saw that, he was killed and he was thrown into the water. And Haridas warned him, don't ever do this to anybody else. You'll be severely punished. And obviously the man was scared out of his wits. So Haridas was not a mean person, though. He killed that person. He could have killed him if he wanted to. But he wanted never to do that again to anyone. Okay, so that's 48, 49.
48.
There are 3 stages. This is okay. The topmost devotee of the Lord will have expanded intelligence and expanded influence, and will be the greatest of the great souls. Due to mature devotion service, he will certainly be situated in transcendental ecstasy and will enter the spiritual sky after quitting this material world. Okay, so the purport says there are 3 stages of transcendental development in devotion service, which are technically called Sthayi Bhava, Anubhava, and Mahabhava. Continual perfect love of Godhead is called Sthayi Bhava. And when it is performed in a particular type of transcendental relationship, it is called Anubhava. But the stage of Mahabhava is visible amongst the personal pleasure potential energies of the Lord.
Potencies.
Huh?
Pleasure potencies. Maybe in the book, maybe it's different.
Well,
Okay.
it says amongst the personal pleasure potential energies of the Lord.
Hmm.
It is understood. Are you reading something else? There it says,
The pleasure potencies of the Lord.
yeah, they probably corrected this.
Hmm.
It is understood that the grandson of Diti, namely Prahlad Maharaj, would constantly meditate on the Lord and reiterate his activities. Reiterate, meaning he would always be speaking about the transcendental activities of the Lord, and he would not stop. He would reiterate it. He would say it over and over again, all the different activities of the Lord. Because he would constantly remain in meditation. Now, that's not silent meditation. His meditation is reiterating over and over again the transcendental services, transcendental activities of the Lord. He would, Prahlad Maharaj would constantly meditate on the Lord and reiterate his activities. Because he would constantly remain in meditation, he would easily transfer himself to the spiritual world after quitting his material body. Such meditation is still more conveniently performed by chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord. This is especially recommended in this age of Kali. So he's talking about the Hare Krishna Maharaj. So therefore, all you have to do is 2 things in Kali Yuga. Chant Hare Krishna and eat Prasad. That's all, just 2 things. And you go back to God. Very simple. It's not complicated. Chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
and eat that Mahaprasad. That's not difficult, is it? It's a good thing. It's the easiest religion in the world. You can go back to God just by eating and chanting. This is Lord Chaitanya's mercy. He's the one that made it so easy. You just eat prasadam and chant Hare Krishna. And then it says, okay, text 49. He will be a virtuously qualified reservoir of all good qualities. He will be jolly and happy in others' happiness, distressed in others' distress, and will have no enemies. He will be a destroyer of the lamentation of all the universes, like the pleasant moon after the summer sun. Well, that's a nice call that metaphor. The pleasant moon after the summer sun. The summer sun is very hot, and in the evening there's a pleasant moon and there might be a cool breeze, and you get some relief after that very hot sun. So who are they talking about? So they're talking about Prahlad Maharaj. He's going to appear and be the reservoir of all good qualities. He will be jolly and happy in others' happiness, distressed in others' distress, and will have no enemies. He will be a destroyer of the lamentation of all the universes, like the pleasant moon after the summer sun. Let's see what purport says. Prahlad Maharaj, the exemplary devotee of the Lord, had all the good qualities humanly possible. Although he was the emperor of this world, he was not a profligate. That means he wasn't a person engaged in illicit activities like illicit sex and taking advantage of people and exploiting people and so forth. Beginning from his childhood, he was the reservoir of all good qualities. Without enumerating those qualities, it is said here summarily that he was endowed with all good qualities. That is a sign of a pure devotee. The most important characteristic of a pure devotee is that he is not lampata or licentious. That means overwhelmingly addicted to sex and sex desire, and seeking always to basically take advantage of women. And another quality is that he is always eager to mitigate the miseries of suffering humanity. The most obnoxious misery of a living entity is his forgetfulness of Krishna. A pure devotee, therefore, always tries to evoke everyone's Krishna consciousness. This is the panacea for all miseries. So panacea is an all-inclusive medicine that you can take to heal you. So what is that all-inclusive medicine? Chanting Hare Krishna. Best medicine. So the most obnoxious misery of a living entity is its forgetfulness of Krishna. So in order to commit sinful activities, we have to forget Krishna. Now, how do we forget Krishna? Well, Krishna helps us forget him, because that's what a person is desiring, because Krishna is in the heart. So Krishna knows what's in the mind or in the heart of the living entity, who might always be meditating on sinful activities and a desire to commit those activities. So then finally, Krishna says, oh, okay, this is what you want. this is what you're going to get. And then he helps the person fall down and forget Krishna and engage in sinful activities. So you have to forget Krishna in order to engage in sinful activities. And who helps you forget Krishna? Krishna himself. So someone will say, oh, why does Krishna, help them forget Krishna? Well, that's because that's what they want. Just like you can, let's say you have a child, and a child is always misbehaving and always wants to eat candies and other junk foods. And, finally, it gets to be too much. And you just throw your arms up in the air and say, okay, that's what you want. That's what you're going to get. But, parents who are very, let's say, clever can wean the child off from junk food by making things that look like junk food but are not. So there are things like that, anyway, so it says that the most obnoxious misery of a living entity is his forgetfulness of Krishna. A pure devotee, therefore, always tries to evoke, in other words, awaken everyone's Krishna consciousness. This is the panacea. The panacea is the elixir or the medicine that can heal all sicknesses. This is the panacea for all miseries. Okay. Text 15. Your grandson will be able to see inside and outside the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose wife is the beautiful goddess of fortune. The Lord can assume the form desired by the devotee, and his face is always beautifully decorated with earrings. Purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is predicted herewith means right now, that the grandson of DT, Prahlad Maharaj, would not only see the personality of Godhead within himself by meditation, but would also be able to see him personally with his eyes. This direct vision is possible only for one who is highly elevated in Krishna consciousness. For the Lord is not possible to see with material eyes. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has multifarious eternal forms such as Krishna, Baladeva, Sankarsana, Aniruddha, Pradumna, Vasudeva, Narayana, Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, and Vamana. And the devotee of the Lord knows all those Vishnu forms. A pure devotee becomes attached to one of the eternal forms of the Lord, and the Lord is pleased to appear before him in the form desired. A devotee does not imagine something whimsical about the form of the Lord, nor does he ever think that the Lord is impersonal and can assume the form desired by the non-devotee. The non-devotee has no idea of the form of the Lord, and thus he cannot think of any one of those above-mentioned forms. But whenever a devotee sees the Lord, he sees him in the most beautifully decorated form, accompanied by his constant companion, the goddess of fortune, who is eternally beautiful. Well, that's a very nice purport. And a lot of good information there. The one big thing we should take away from this purport is that the Supreme Personality of God has multifarious eternal forms such as Krishna, Baladeva, Sankarsana, Aniruddha, Padumna, Vasudeva, Narayana, Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, and Vamana. So when he appears as Varaha, a gigantic pig, but not an ordinary pig, a gigantic pig. So you can understand this is not a pig. This is an incarnation of the Lord. There's no pig as big as Varaha. Varaha is so big you can't imagine. And he can pick up the earth with his tusks. So that means that he's as big or bigger than the earth. So when you see something like that, then you know this is the Supreme Personality of God. This is not an ordinary pig. Right? And so whenever there's someone who demonstrates supernatural powers, not so-called tricks, but supernatural powers, then you know it's an incarnation of God. Okay.
So does this mean like if someone thinks that they are a devotee but they're not attached to any forms of the Lord, they're actually not there?
Well, how can they know what you're saying? They're not attached to any of the forms of the Lord.
Yeah, and then just like Krishna also claims that he is everywhere, so they accept that definition of Krishna and then say, okay, Krishna Lord is everywhere, so I don't need to worship a particular form.
Well, that would be like my body. Some nonsense person would talk like that. There was once this lady whose son was a devotee, so she came to see her son. She was against Krishna consciousness, and she was sitting down with us, and we were discussing Krishna consciousness while we were eating, having prasadam. And at one point she said, I can't accept that God is a baby. I just can't accept this. You know, he appears like a baby. He's got in other words, she was saying, he's got to have like a white beard and wrinkles. He's got to be an old guy and,
Old wise man.
Old white man, yeah. Can't be a black man. And so forth. So these types of, let's say, misunderstanding of Krishna's transcendental. But first of all, when Christians depict God, I'm not saying that they depict Jesus, they depict Jesus as Father God. It's always an old man with wrinkles. So that means they don't understand anything about God. Because Krishna never gets old, right? He doesn't get older than maybe 16 or 20 years old, right? So they don't know, I mean, their priests, their gurus, etc., they don't know anything about God. Because they're the ones that are telling the artists how to paint or how to, what God looks like or should look like in their speculative way. Okay. Well, but whenever a devotee sees the Lord, he sees him in a most beautifully decorated form, accompanied by his constant companion, the goddess of fortune, who is eternally beautiful. Just imagine seeing that, the Lord and the goddess of fortune. Of course, why not? Every time you go to the temple, you see the Lord.
Very bold.
Yeah. You shouldn't think, oh, this is not really the Lord, this is just the statue. No. The sage Maitreya said, hearing that her grandson would be a great devotee and that her sons would be killed by Krishna, Iti was highly pleased in mind. This basically, whoopee, my sons are going to be killed by the Lord, and my grandsons are all going to be pure devotees. Iti was very aggrieved to learn that because of her untimely pregnancy, her sons would be demons and would fight with the Lord. But when she heard that her grandson would be a great devotee and that her two sons would be killed by the Lord, she was very satisfied. As the wife of a great sage, and the daughter of a great Prajapati, Daksha, she knew that being killed by the personality of Godhead is a great fortune. Since the Lord is absolute, his acts of violence and non-violence are both on the absolute. There is no difference in such acts of the Lord. Mundane violence and non-violence have nothing to do with the Lord's acts. A demon killed by him attains the same result as one who attains liberation after many, many births of penance and austerity. The word Vrisham is significant herein because it indicates that Diti was pleased beyond her expectations. So here's a mother who's pleased that her sons are being killed, but not by demons, by the Lord. So that's a very auspicious thing, that she knows that they're going to be liberated. And that her grandson will be a pure devotee. But can't ask anything better. Her two sons are liberated by being killed by Krishna. And her grandsons are going to be killed. So that's the best of the best thing you could ever have. Let's put it like that. Okay.
So,
we are ready to start. Okay, go ahead.
so either a pure devotee or an extreme demon will achieve both ends will achieve the same destination, but the people in between will be the one
No, same destination.
like they'll be in the back in Brahmajyot.
To the- Is that what happens, Maharaj, if you're when Krishna killed Hiranyakasipu, so he got liberated, then he went back to Brahman. That's all. That is the liberation he attained.
Exception.
And even in Mahabharata, right, like all the people in the
Yes.
war, everybody who died, they say they all got liberated.
Yeah, but in this case, right, Maharaj, I mean, just a follow-up there is that this Jaya Vijay were the
Yeah.
ones who acted as the demons, so they would come back as the devotees.
They go back to
Okay.
Vaikuntha.
When you get killed by the Lord, you see the Lord. Actually touches you, you get completely purified. So you don't go into the Brahman Jyoti, you go back to God. People who get into the Brahman Jyoti are the demons, right?
Yesterday, we were reading Nectar of Devotion, Maharaj. In Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada writes that Kamsa and Shishupal, they have achieved Brahmajyoti, which yogis have achieved after meditating for millions and billions of years.
Yeah.
So he gave an analogy of they have entered the kingdom of they have entered the kingdom, but they have not entered the king's palace.
Okay. In other words, they didn't go to Vaikuntha.
Yes.
Yes. But they're still liberated.
Yes.
So you see the different levels of liberation. Okay, so I think we'll stop there. Any other questions or comments?
I think Puja Mataji, or I think there is a comment that, but the demon's act will not be pleasing to the Lord. But we say, like, always do something that's pleasing to Krishna. That's the devotee's path.
Okay.
And then the question, I think, is like, because the act of the demons will not be pleasing to the Lord, will they also get? Is that the question or comment, Mataji? If you want to unmute and ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So my question is this: only because this act will not be pleasing, so when we say that they are getting liberated, while a devotee also goes to Goloka, so is there a difference? Like, even though we know like Ravana was originally devotee, but the acts of this birth were not good. So I'm a little confused here.
What's the confusion?
So because they are seeing Lord face to face at the time of death, so they are also getting liberated. Is that correct understanding?
I didn't understand what you said.
No, I think the question is that they are also getting the same benefit or like liberation, but in reality it's not pleasing to the Lord.
Their acts are very bound.
So how will they get the same
End result.
end result?
Because if you're killed by the Lord, you get completely purified.
Yeah, so I think here the key is that you have to be killed by the Lord.
There's very few people who are
Yeah.
killed by the Lord.
Yeah.
So it's not like all demons at death will achieve that. They have to be personally killed by the Lord
Mhm.
or killed in the presence of the Lord. Personal presence of the Lord.
So Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So what Mataji read from Nectar of Instruction, demons get to the kingdom, but they don't get to the palace of king. So do you understand that demons go to the kingdom, but they don't get the personal association of the Lord? Because those who are in the king's palace, they always do some personal service to the king. So in that context, if I understand, is it correct? I mean, like Guru Maharaj has to.
Yeah. Maharaj is going to comment.
Well, if you're in the presence of the Lord, you're seeing the Lord, and you can also. So I'm not quite sure. I mean, when you use, let's say, metaphors, you have to be careful not to violate the real meaning that meant. So, what do you mean by, you're in the palace of the Lord, but you're not seeing the Lord? Is that what you said?
Like a personal service versus you're there in the association of the Lord, but as maybe a citizen in a kingdom where you're in the, let's say we're in this country, a citizen of this country, but we're not necessarily directly in, let's say, White House serving the president. So there is a difference between a regular citizen who also knows the president and is under the laws of this particular country versus a person who's directly associated and serving the president. So if we take that analogy, like would that work in the kingdom of God, wherein we are back to the kingdom of God technically, but we're not necessarily in the close association of the Lord.
It says, although Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are the same and one absolute truth, devotees like Kamsa or Shishupala could attain only to the Brahman effulgence. They could not have realization of Paramatma or Bhagavan. That is the distinction. Kamsa and Shishupala attained to the absolute truth, but they were not allowed to enter into Goloka Vrindavana abode. Impersonalists and the enemies of the Lord are, because of the attraction to God, allowed to enter into his kingdom. But they are not allowed to enter into Vaikuntha planets or Goloka Vrindavana planet of the Supreme Lord. To enter the kingdom and to enter the king's palace are not the same thing.
Okay. That's a good explanation. Where is that?
This is chapter 15, Maharaj.
Okay.
Prabhupada is writing.
Yeah. So you have to become a pure devotee. Then you can enter. And pure devotee means you're always thinking of Krishna, always chanting his glories, always. It's good that every day, like, for example, every day, what I like to do is, chant the Brahma Samhita.
Brahma Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam.
So forth. So it's very nice to repeat these transcendental mantras and meditating. And so I always repeat the Srimad Swapata
Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Dantastoya Bhadrani Bhumati Susrutu Sadam.
Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is the Paramatma, super soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous and properly heard and chanted. Properly heard and chanted. So I always chant this every day, and read the English translation of it. It's very nice. The Brahma Samhita, and then these supplementary prayers in the Tasvapita Krishna. Haribol.
Haribo.
Maharaj, I have a question, Maharaj.
Yes.
This is about praying for people souls who passed away. Can a daughter also pray for the souls that have departed? Then what is the right way to do that prayer? Especially when somebody has just passed away versus somebody has just has passed away like several years ago. Like my dad passed away. So I want to understand what's the right way. What is the right role I can play?
Well, some people would say once a year you have to do short ceremony. But you can do short ceremony every day. Basically, you're feeding the father or both of them left their bodies, and you make some prasadam, some food to cook it, and then you offer it to Krishna, and Krishna offers it back to you as prasadam, and now you offer that prasadam to your relatives who have left their bodies for their benefit. And then after all that, then you take prasadam. It's a very nice thing to do. Whenever there's like a wife who loses her husband and he dies, so I usually recommend to them that every day they should cook food, offer it to Krishna, and then offer it to their husband, just like they were doing when the husband was alive. Right? And if the husband is in a bad situation, he'll be liberated from that bad situation. He won't come back to life, but the material life, but he'll be liberated from, let's say, being in hell or something like that, because you're offering prasadam. That's how powerful prasadam is. Yeah. We should never underestimate the power of prasadam. And we should know what prasadam is. It's food that's offered to the Lord with love and devotion.
What should the son do, Maharaj?
What?
In this case, what should the son?
Which son?
Son versus daughter.
Like for me, I think that is the instruction. For my brother, what can he do?
Your brother.
Yes, yes.
The same thing. Why not?
He should also cook, but he doesn't cook, Maharaj. If he doesn't cook, what is the next best thing he can do?
Chant Hare Krishna. Chant Hare Krishna. Eat the prasadam if it's offered. Do you have a brother?
I have a brother, no. He's in Austin.
Okay, so it's not like really practicing Krishna.
No, Maharaj. I mean, he's favorable, but not actively practicing.
Okay. So how will he be able to eat the prasadam? He can't.
I can. My mother lives with my brother. Like I can tell her.
So that would be good. Will he eat it if he knows it's offered to Krishna?
Yes, yes, ma'am. He doesn't have any problem.
Is he a vegetarian?
It's not very good.
That means he eats anything then. Prasadam as well as meat. Well, yeah, if he eats prasadam, maybe Krishna will bless him. Stop. It is what's called a cumulative it's a cumulative. When someone, keeps
Sukriti.
eating prasadam,
Sukriti?
the cumulative buildup of eating prasadam. Eventually, one day they wake up and they say, I'm not going to eat meat anymore. I'm just going to eat prasadam, and I'm not even chanting Hare Krishna now, and so forth.
Mhm.
So that's why if you'll take some prasadam every day, eventually, you'll change. Eventually, you have to just keep.
We are seeing this, Maharaj, with the food truck people. Those are coming from
Yeah.
years, like more than 5 years.
Yeah.
Earlier they were just like not doing anything. Now they're chanting as well. Some people are attending classes as well. They're getting interested in so many things. Some people are interested in serving as well. Like they ask how they can serve.
Today, Maharaj, you're going there, right, to University of Washington. We're going to actually meet a lot of people who have been relying on food truck for a long time.
What time is it?
We're going to go there by 11. But, we'll start maybe around 10:30, 10:15.
Is it the same batch that British people?
Yeah.
So in that batch, Maharaj, most of the people, they came from the food truck to that batch that British Prabhu was teaching.
Wow. It's good.
And after years of eating prasadam, they are getting just interested. Like, okay, I want to hear.
See? So don't be discouraged.
It's
Keep giving them prasadam.
Seeing this practically gives Maharaj more like confidence.
Yeah.
Like, people
Well,
are
the
changing.
process works, but you have to be patient and not get discouraged. And just offer with love and devotion and prasadam to other people. That's why we give out burritos and prasadam. And cookies.
These are favorites.
Very favorite. We have to give out brownies also. That's coming up next. All right, thank you very much.
Haribol, any other questions or comments? If not, we will end the session.